Well, it's tax season, everybody. Welcome. It is the middle of April. Welcome to another episode of Cowboys Overtime here on StarTelegram.com. I am Fort Worth Star Telegram columnist Mac Engel, and we have a very special guest for this episode as we preview the 2025 NFL Draft. As you can see, as always, joining me is our Dallas Cowboys savant and NFL Draft expert of his own making. I do want to make sure we give Nick Harris due credit. And that other good-looking gentleman is an NFL draft expert who needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyways. From Philadelphia, joining us, Mr. Ryan Fowler of the Draft Network. Gentlemen, scale 1 to 10, how excited are you about the 2025 NFL Draft?
Nick, I'll let you go ahead, man.
Man, I'm like at a 7.5 right now. Catch me about this time next week. I'll be at a 10.
7.5, a little low.
It's only
low.
because I still have some stacking to do. I still have some rankings to fix.
We need you to up the energy a little bit. I'm a little surprised my man Nick's half asleep on the draft because he probably hasn't slept in the last 2 weeks as he brushes up on all the great Ivy League players that he's scouting for the draft. Ryan, are you excited about this draft?
Pumped up. I really am. This is a very unique class. I think that it's always fun talking about top 30 guys, top 35 guys, but I think this is a draft to where all across football, if these are organizations that allow their scouting staffs to do the football jobs, you're going to find a lot of talent, contributing talent on all 3 days. So this is a class I'm very, very excited for. And really over the last 3 or 4 years, really one of the ones that I can really look at and say, there's going to be a lot of good players that fall to some teams where we look back 4 or 5 years from now, guys, and say, how in the world did this guy get here? So I'm very excited.
Okay, a couple things I sort of gleamed from your first statement there, Ryan. I want both of you guys to tackle this. The NFL Draft begins on April 24th. It concludes on April 26th, 3-day event now. Ryan, you said something that was kind of a red flag to me. You said it is a unique class. When I hear unique, I hear the word interesting. And when I hear the word interesting, that sounds to me like a person who's asked, hey, how was dinner? It was interesting. So it's like this very vague description of something that could be really, really good or horrendously awful, but ultimately memorable. So when you say unique, what does that mean as it relates to this class specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it starts at the top, right? With one of the most unique football players we've seen enter the draft ever, and that's Travis Hunter out of Colorado. That is someone, and for me, that's my number one player on the board. I've personally never seen anything like him as far as an all-pro ceiling on either side of the football. I think at some point he is going to be someone that I'm not saying full-time at receiver and DB, but it would be silly if you're a defensive coordinator and your DBs are getting torched and he's sitting beside you, or if you're a quarterback and your quarterback's going to hit and there's no one separating and he's standing beside you on the sideline. So I think from an interesting perspective, use that word. It starts at the top with a unique player like Travis Hunter and in a class really that beyond really Cam Ward, likely to the Titans at number 1. The draft starts at number 2, and you could say 3 or 4 different types of player could go at that spot. So it really is a unique and interesting type of class.
Nick, you have the top pick. You're the general manager of the Tennessee Titans. You know you don't have a quarterback, that the Will Levis experiment didn't really yield the results or even kind of the hope that you would need to see to say, we've got the quarterback that we want to build around. Now you're sitting at number 1. You're the GM. Who are you drafting?
For me, I'm taking Travis Hunter. I'm taking a guy that can give me an impact on both sides of the ball. I do love Cam Ward. I have a first-round grade on him. I think he's the best quarterback in this class. But I would take my chances on getting a generational-type talent in Travis Hunter and then take my chances in the quarterback class in 2026, which I think is going to be pretty solid. I think it'll be better than this year's class. But that would be where I go.
Okay, so Ryan, you mentioned it. I'm glad you did. The Travis Hunter thing is fascinating because he is adamant. The Heisman Trophy winner from Colorado, whose jersey number, along with his quarterback teammate Shadur Sanders, is going to be retired, although that's a very debatable topic in and of itself. This weekend at the spring game in Boulder, Travis Hunter has said he's playing both ways. He's playing DB. He's playing wide receiver. We haven't seen a guy do that since Deion Sanders did quite a bit of it in limited time with the Cowboys. And obviously the last time we really saw that consistently was from a different era of football. Ryan, why do you think this can work, that a kid, he's a dynamic athlete, can play 60 or 80 plays minimum in a 60-minute game and hold up and be a top flight player in both directions?
Yeah, I think it's really impressive watching what Travis did in the Big 12, really, the last 2 seasons where, there are concerns with him at DB to where he's going to be attacked in the ground game, the play strength at the top of routes. And you look at the other side of the ball where guys are going to get in his face and they're going to press him inside the contact window and ability to get off. But I think when we're talking about some of these two-way stars, you mentioned Deion Sanders, or I look back to a Charles Woodson. For me, Travis Hunter has an all-pro type of ceiling at corner and at receiver. And when I look at what he can be right away, it's very interesting when people ask me what is the highest floor prospect in this class. I have a hard time not saying Travis Hunter because I know what I'm going to get right away from him, whether it's at corner, whether it's at receiver, or it's a little bit of a split as far as snaps down the road. So when I look at what Travis Hunter can be right now as the Heisman winner, as a player also that is wired correctly between the ears as far as someone that is just going to come in and work his backside off to be the best he can be, wherever that is on a football field, that's a player that I want in my building. And I'm glad Nick said, hey, if I'm the Titans, I'm GM Mike Borgonzi, I'm going to take Travis Hunter at 1. Wait to potentially next year because the Titans, we're not expecting them to win the AFC title. I don't think anybody is right now in 2025. So we look at next year's class where the quarter headliner is going to be Arch Manning. That's a situation that I would likely, I wouldn't be shocked I would be shocked if it does happen. But when you look at Travis Hunter, he's just a flat out sensational type of football player that Nick, used that word generational. That's a scary word to use. But when you look at that young man, what he can be, he's my number 1 corner in the class, my number 1 receiver in the class. And we really have never, ever seen anything like that ever in the NFL.
Nick, question for you. If you had to pick one position and you said, man, I'm sorry, Travis, but this is what we're doing and this is where you're playing, what position is his ultimately, do you think his future will be in the long run? Because I don't think anybody thinks he's going to be an 8 to 9, 10-year player both ways. But if you had to pick one and say, we're going with one, you're a receiver or you're a DB, which one is it?
He's an impact player, and he's going to make an impact on wherever he lines up on the field. For me, I'm maximizing that impact at receiver, although I do feel like he is a better corner, if that makes sense. But I'm maximizing his impact as a receiver, and I'm putting him on the field offensively and letting him go after the ball with his ball skills, athleticism. His run after the catch is incredible. The only thing I worry about is the injuries. That's the only concern I have about Travis Hunter is as far as will his body stand up over the course of a 10, 15-year career, because he certainly has that type of potential in him to play that long into the NFL.
So, Ryan, one of the things that I love to do, and I know you do it, and you talk to NFL guys long enough, and invariably you will go down the road of who is he? When you start evaluating players, it just comes out.
Yeah.
And even though, the next sentence is, well, that's not fair to such and such, you're looking for some kind of visual to give you an idea of who this guy reminds you of, to give you an idea of what maybe his floor is, his ceiling, whatever. So, guys, I want you to both answer this. Ryan, you go first. As a DB and as a receiver, who's Travis Hunter?
Yeah, I think, one of the fun exercises that I don't really try to engage in too much, are player comps. Because I think Travis Hunter is someone that is a unique player at the position. Yeah. But I think when you look at corner, he reminds me a lot of Josh Norman, what he was able to do in Carolina. He does remind me of him. And I don't want to say Justin Jefferson at receiver because I think the potential is absolutely there. Nick, you mentioned the ability after the catch, the ability to go up and get it. He's not 6'4", 6'5", but the way he attacks the football is absolutely outstanding. He's a 3-level threat. Right away, I would say that Travis Hunter is a guy that can eclipse 1,000 yards as a rookie at receiver and be a guy that plays probably 30 to 40% of the snaps at DB. And again, I don't think there's a situation across football if you're a GM to where you can fill a hole at wide receiver and fill a hole at corner. Even if you're Cleveland, where there's guys everywhere at DB as far as young players like Denzel Ward and Martin Emerson and Greg Newsome, just draft good football players. And the best football organizations do that by adding BPA. So Travis Hunter, I think, again, What is he? He's the best player in this class for me personally, and he's an immediate impact, high-level player that really, again, has an all-pro potential on either side of the football.
All right, Nick, you're my colleague. I can't hold this over Ryan, so I will with you. Give me a comp. Who's Travis Hunter?
Yeah, I'm not the comp guy either. I'm really not. I try to stay away from him just because it's kind of tough.
I'm a lazy NFL journalist.
Hey, especially when you're talking about a guy like Travis Hunter. Especially when you're talking about a guy like Travis Hunter, right? Because you mentioned something, Ryan. It was like, okay, he could be 1,000-yard receiver in his rookie year and also play 30 to 40% of snaps at corner. But it would probably be more rational and more reasonable for him to do the opposite, where he's playing 100% of the snaps at corner, but 30 to 40% at receiver in a slot type role. What does it look like in a spot corner situation? Is he only in when it's between the 20s and then in the red zone he gets subbed out? Like, is it only on second and third downs? Like, how does that look from a Travis Hunter spot corner perspective? I think that's going to be something really fascinating that most likely the Browns are going to have to figure out going into his rookie season. But nevertheless, he's a generational prospect, and I don't use that word lightly either. But it's a guy that we're going to be talking about for a long time.
I was going to say, Nick, it's scary too about if a coach out there was to say, hey, we're just going to play you inside the 20s. Well, then he's going to say, hey, turn on my tape against TCU. When I came off the man route and pick up the pass on the perimeter, just his instincts. I hate saying the word instincts. I was formerly with Washington, drafting the Emmanuel Forbes experiment with the guy who was an instincts and ball hawk out of the SEC. That always may scare some people, but this guy's obviously a different class of football player, and that's just someone that, like I said, if you play corner 100% of the snaps, or vice versa, where you're on the field 50% of the time, and let's say, hey, you want you in between 20s, turn on my tape, coach, watch me at Colorado, see what I can do when the back of the end zone is another defender, and it's just going to be a guy that can really shut down a third of the side of the field, which we really haven't seen in football for a little while.
Ryan, you mentioned that first game that Colorado played under Deion Sanders at TCU, and I just coincidentally happened to be covering the game. And all three of us know this. When you watch a game, whether it's high school or college, there are certain guys that just jump off the film, jump off the page, jump off the field. You're like, who is that guy?
Yeah.
And that game had lots of good players in that game. Travis Hunter was the one that immediately in the first quarter, Ryan, you said, who the hell is that guy? Yeah. And there were just things that he could do instinctively. I don't think there's certain guys who just have a gift. They just do. And it's that way in just about any profession. And Travis Hunter, when I saw him, thought there's just certain things that he can do on a football field for whatever reason that sets him apart from everybody else. And that's why I thought, even though there are good quarterbacks there at the top, and clearly you can make a case Cleveland really needs one, even though they've committed Deshaun Watson $1 trillion and 100 draft picks to get him, where the Giants. That's why, Nick, I agree with you. You can get a high-impact player at two positions for potentially two contracts. Whereas, and I think your batting average on that player is much greater than it is on a guy that, if you look at Cam Ward, I'm not saying Cam Ward's going to be anything other than good. You're like, well, what are my percentages? And I think Travis Hunter, your percentages as an all-pro player, potentially in both spots, at least one. That's why I agree with you. I would say go with that. You mentioned Cam Ward. Let's talk about him for a minute. He's a really impressive young guy. He came here for the Davey O'Brien Award. I had a chance to visit with him. I was like, wow, this is a really nice young guy. Really bright, well-spoken, has a great story coming from virtually nowhere, being unrecruited to a Heisman finalist and the Davey O'Brien winner, and now potentially maybe a top 1, 2, or 3 pick. Give me your order of quarterbacks that you think are going to go one, the top quarterbacks taken. Is Cam Ward going ahead of what apparently now is the lightning rod player of the draft, Colorado's Shadur Sanders? Ryan, you go first with this.
Yeah. If I had to rank my three, first off, I did want to address, Cam Ward. Just he's been outstanding since his days, right, at Incarnate Word. And I remember posting something for the Draft Network, whatever it was, 2-3 years ago before his first year at Washington State. And I said, this is your new overlord, really, of the air raid in college football. And be familiar with this young man's name. And obviously at that time, I didn't predict he was going to do what he did at Miami and obviously become the number 1 overall pick likely at this point in time. But he clearly, for me, is the number 1 quarterback in this class. I have a major separation between him and even a Shadur Sanders. I think Shadur, will be the second quarterback off the board. Is that to Cleveland at 2? Is that to New York at 3? Is it to New Orleans at 9? Is it to the Steelers? Is it to the Rams? We'll see what ultimately happens. I would say Shadur is my 2, and then really it's a jumble of a 3A, 3B, 3C with a Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart, and I really like Tyler Shuck from Louisville. I've liked him a ton. I gave him a second-round grade in my evaluation for the Draft Network, which is on our website for those that are curious on my report on him. Big, physical, mature quarterback that can make all the throws in the book, and is also good off structure, whether to his arm side or to his weak side. And not perfect. We really don't see these guys go in the second round as far as these unicorns, second-round quarterbacks like we saw with Will Levis, last until day 2. But Cam Ward 1, Shadur Sanders 2, even though I have a second-round grade on Shadur Sanders. And then I would say that Jackson Dart, Tyler Shuck, Jalen Milroe is really in that combined 3, 4, 5, if you will.
Nick,
Do you have a concern about Tyler Shuck? Do you have a concern about Tyler Shuck being 26 in October, or is that a positive to you?
For me, I do like the maturity. I'll say that, and I will say this, Nick, in that I like seeing the success that he had from an Oregon to a Texas Tech to a Louisville, 3 different schemes, 3 different offenses, the progression that I saw in his game. Also, seeing him live at the Senior Bowl, in an alternate setting, that neutral environment, working with guys. I know it's very vanilla, right? The offensive concepts as far as what they're doing. But I think the age, for me, it's not huge. I know performance ceiling, that's the biggest thing for guys around the league as far as what are you going to be potentially 2-3 years down the road. Are you that Brandon Whedon type? You've already reached your ceiling, or are you past it? So that's a major concern. But for me right away, to bring him in and compete as a QB2, potentially a QB1, I'm not expecting Tyler Shuck to be a top 15 quarterback in football. So the age right now for me, I'm not drafting him to be that, so it doesn't concern me too much.
Nick, you take this one. Who are your quarterbacks of preference in this draft?
Yeah, my 1, 2, 3, it goes Cam Ward, Shadur Sanders, who I also have a second-round grade on. I just have the first on Cam Ward. And then I have a second-round grade on my QB3, Jalen Milroe. I think the playmaking ability, what he can do with his athleticism, it's almost like Debo can sling the pill a little bit with his body structure and how he can fight through tacklers in the open field. You see that first half against Georgia, and you see a guy that could have gone number 1 overall. But then you look at games like Michigan a couple of years ago and Oklahoma to end the season last year, and it's like, man, this guy still does have a lot of development left to go. A lot of teams have been keying in on him. You look at the Steelers that had a meeting with him in Tuscaloosa the day before their pro day at Alabama. That could be potential, a fit at 21 if he's still there, or maybe early in the second. But I do wonder how that fifth year option factors in with quarterbacks. Is there a team that maybe looks at that 27 to the 32 range and is like, hey, Jackson Dart's still on the board. Jalen Milroe's still on the board. We want that guy. We want to be able to have the 5th-year option on him. Let's trade up and let's go get him. So I wonder how much that'll factor in with the quarterback specifically. And then my QB4 is Kyle McCord. I'm a big Kyle McCord guy out of Syracuse, 328 yards per game last season with Syracuse. He can push the ball downfield. I like his 3-level game. He doesn't have a ton of mobility, and I think that'll probably limit him as far as what he can do at the next level. But when you start talking about that next group of guys, I like Kyle McCord's maturity. I like what he's been able to do throughout his career. I felt like he was kind of the guy that got put all the blame on a couple of years ago at Ohio State. Granted, some of it was on him, but some of it I feel like was also offensive game planning. And it's a big reason why they had such an offensive overhaul last year. But Kyle McCord, I think he's a guy that could end up being a starter in this league.
Okay, this is great. You guys know so much about this. I want to ask, I don't know how this happened. I mean, I do and I don't, in terms of Shadur Sanders becoming a lightning rod for conversation. His dad is his dad, and you take the good and the bad with that. And I've been hypercritical of his dad and I've also been very complimentary of Deion at times too. But his son looks like he can really play quarterback. And now, as it happens, every time the season ends, you go in and you just dissect a guy and you kill him. When I saw Shadur, now granted, I saw him play in his first game against TCU, and he lit a very bad defense up. So I understand that. Ryan, what are the red flags about Shadur translating up as a top tier NFL quarterback?
Yeah, there's a lot for me. I think the biggest thing really in any sport that I look for as far as your profile, your fundamental base is your footwork and your lower half mobility. In a day and age where we don't live in the Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre-ish type of profile to where you just sit in the pocket, and Phillip Rivers even, and just, You not have 245-pound guys on the edge like a Micah Parsons, breathing down your neck. You got to be able to do something, expand a playbook with your lower half. I give credit to Shadur Sanders. I think he's one of the toughest guys in this class. I loved seeing him get up and battle his backside off every single time he took hits for the last 2 years at Colorado because, I get it. There's guys on the outside like a Travis Hunter, and you look at Will Shepard, LaJohntay West, or Jimmy Horn, they're likely to hear their names called as well. There's talent there, but when I look at Shadur Sanders as far as adding him into an organization to where there is a neutral environment, you got a new voice in your headset, your dad's not your coach, you're not really picking and choosing who you want around your offense, you're not really picking who your OC is from the years that it was in Colorado as far as I like this system, I like this system. When I look at Shadur, the internal clock has got to improve. The arm talent is very average. I don't see him as far as a guy that can look at all three windows, whether it's to his front side or his back side, and consistently pumping into tighter, smaller windows when you're facing a Patrick Surtain or ball hawks like Dallas has in Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs. So that's what scares me. But I will say this too. There's so much knock on Shadur Sanders as far as the swagger, the confidence, the glitz, the glare. For me personally, if I'm a GM and I'm Pittsburgh or I'm the Rams or I'm New Orleans or I'm whoever, I want a guy in the building that has a little bit of a something to him as far as a confidence and a swagger under center to be that face of the franchise, to come in and lead a locker room. So I think Shadur Sanders has that. He's obviously going to have to lead with his play and not just his talk. But there are some concerns as far as the fundamental ability as a football player with the arm, with the lower half mobility, and really with the internal clock at times that really does scare me as far as the immediate transition of what he can be for an NFL offense.
Last guy I'm going to talk about, I was going to talk about Tyler Sheck, but we've gone so long now, I'm going to keep it to one more quarterback. Nick, you and I have talked about this guy. I want you to talk about any development with this guy in the last couple of weeks, because I have heard, take that for what it's worth, the Indianapolis Colts, who may or may not have a quarterback, I don't know. They signed Joe Flacco, and they have the 5th overall pick from last year's draft, or 2 drafts ago, as their starter in Anthony Richardson, assuming he doesn't tap out. But they're interested in Quinn Ewers, the former Texas quarterback, has bounced all the way from the top of the draft, whatever that's worth, back in August, to now a 2nd or a 3rd. Nick, you go first on this. What have you heard about how teams feel about Quinn's chances now as a 2nd or maybe even 1st-round pick?
I don't think it's a first-round situation for Quinn, but I would not be surprised if you see a team swing on him on day 2. I think you look at his upside, you look at his traits, you look at his arm talent, and there's so much to love there. He's just a guy that probably needs some seasoning. And the thing for me about Quinn Ewers is I wonder if he did not take that hit from Dallas Turner back in, that would have been 2021. I wonder how that changed his career completely, because you see him come back that season and he's.
Do you think that hit really changed the direction of his career, Nick?
I think it did. You look at how he handled pressure after that hit. It was completely different. And you see it on tape too, because that first quarter that he had against Alabama, arguably one of the better quarters he had in his entire career. I'd back that up with probably his Michigan game this past year. It was solid, and he had a couple of great games on tape. But I think teams will see the potential with Quinn Ewers. There's going to be a team that I think swings on him on day 2. My perfect fit that I think would be great for him is the Los Angeles Rams. If the Rams don't get a quarterback on day 1, let Quinn go to LA, learn behind Stafford for 1, 2, 3 years, and then take the reins from Sean McVay. I think that would be a great fit for him. I worry about how he's going to be able to handle NFL pressure. And I think that's going to be the most important thing for an NFL team to address early in his career.
Brian, you turn.
Yeah, what an unbelievable situation Quinn was at this past year, specifically at Texas, to where everything he did was always, how long is the leash until we see Arch Manning on the football field? And that was my question heading into the CFP for, I needed to see Quinn raise the performance ceiling, not of just himself, but raise the performance ceiling of guys that he had on the outside that we're going to hear their names called early and often in this NFL draft. So when I look at Quinn, a lot of the same things, to echo Nick, the arm talent is outstanding. We talked about him back in the 7-on-7 circuit before going initially to Ohio State as far as how dynamically talented this young man is. So I think the biggest thing right now is handling the pressure as far as guys in his face and also the touchdown field. You got the arm talent. I don't think I need to see 100-mile-an-hour fastballs on a 10-yard dig route to the outside. I don't need to see that all the time. I just need to just tempo it a little bit, taper it back a little bit. The footwork is there. I think all the talent is there. But I think, Nick, one word you said that does scare me is the word potential. I think that word potential can get coaches fired. However, if he does land in a situation like Los Angeles, learn under Sean, learn under Matthew Stafford. If even in we live in a microwave society nowadays where everything is expected quick, I think that's a nice spot for him just to sit, learn, hold a clipboard, potentially be even a QB3 in the situations where you're not thrust on the field in case Matthew Stafford, he's not 25 years old anymore. So I still like Quinn. He's a day 3 player for me in this class. It was hard at times watching him at Texas this year, but really I give the kid credit because it was always just, we love the QB2 here. When is it time for Arch Manning? And now they're going to have that this year, but what an unbelievable situation he came from and battled his backside off for me.
Okay, guys, let's take a quick look at draft sleepers. This is always kind of a fun topic because these are not your celebrity picks, but rather guys who are highly regarded as value picks at, let's say, the 2nd round or maybe the 3rd round. I'm talking Jaden Blue, the running back out of Texas, wide receiver Dante Thornton out of Tennessee, wide receiver Isaac Tesla, great name, by the way, at the University of Arkansas. And we've got, let me see if I can say this name right. He's defensive end Braden Swinson out of LSU. These are names that I've just read, and I don't want to act like, obviously Jaden Blue I'm familiar with because he was at Texas. The kid at Arkansas I'd seen play when they came to AT&T Stadium. He looked like he had something. Who are some other guys that you would look at and say, if your team gets that guy at the right spot, I'm not talking a reach, at the right spot, you would say, don't sleep on that guy. That's a day 1 starter.
Yeah.
Day 1 starter.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I think there's 2 players that pop to my mind as far as guys that, are in that 2nd, 3rd, 4th round bucket that if you add, I think to expect to contribute right away and at a high level. One is edge rusher Antoine Powell-Ryland from Virginia Tech. Really enjoyed watching him in this pre-draft process, dominated in isolated scenarios down there at Shrine, which is what he's going to be able to face right away at the NFL level. I just really like his game, and he is someone that from that 757 area down there in Newport News, they flat out get after it. And football is really everything for those young men coming in to the NFL. So Antoine Powell-Ryland is absolutely a guy for me on day 2. And then Brashard Smith, the running back from SMU, I cannot say enough good things about him as far as a guy that was a former top 25 recruit as a receiver, went to Miami, then was at SMU this year where, for a lot of people out there that didn't watch the SMU Mustangs this year, I know it wasn't pretty at Penn State in the CFP, but he and Kevin Jennings were a dynamic backfield tandem down there for the Mustangs this year. So Brashard's going to be a playbook extender from year 1. And I think he's also going to be a guy that has a little bit more bulk to him to live inside the tackles as well. So Brashard Smith, running back from SMU, Antoine Powell-Ryland, edge rusher from Virginia Tech for me.
Great answer. Nick, what you got?
I'm going to throw a couple out there. Bayshell Tutton, running back out of Virginia Tech. I'm going to stick with another Virginia Tech guy.
Yeah.
You talk about home run speed, contact balance, yards after contact. I think this is a guy you could get potentially in the 3rd round and could be a day 1 starter. And if you're looking at it from a Cowboys perspective, this is a guy you can trust on early downs to be able to hand off on 1st and 2nd down, get you reliable yardage, and then have Javonte Williams come in on those 3rd down situations for pass catching and pass protection. I don't love Tutton in pass protection, so you can take him off the field on passing downs. I think he can give you that type of home run speed, though. The Cowboys have been looking for that since before Tony Pollard got hurt. I think Tutton would be a phenomenal add. And then a corner that I like in this draft that I think could be a starter. I think this is a guy that, you look around at a few of the guys last year. There were a couple of corners in the draft last year on day 2 and day 3 that found their way into heavy roles. I think Quincy Riley out of Louisville is going to be one of those guys. He's a guy that can play, I believe, at the nickel. I believe he has some outside versatility as well. There is going to be some things you're going to have to work on, I think, early on with him. But if you're looking at it from a Cowboys perspective, the Cowboys DB's coach, David Overstreet, was at his pro day at Louisville a few weeks back. And I think this is a guy they're taking a hard look at to potentially replace Jordan Lewis at the nickel.
Okay, yeah. Let's address – I'm sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say a quick story on Quincy Riley for you, Nick, as far as last year. He was initially committed to the Senior Bowl, and then he went back to school. I remember talking to their DB's coach at Louisville, Steve Ellis, and he said, hey, Quincy wants to go back to school because he wants to be a top 50 player in 2025. And at that point in time, he wasn't getting the grades he wanted from teams. So they invited Jarvis Brownlee Jr., who obviously was drafted by the Titans and did a nice job in year 1 for them. But now he goes down this year, goes to the Senior Bowl, right, and shows up well. And likely, as you said, he'll be likely a top 50 pick.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so the Dallas Cowboys have the 12th overall selection. And they have what Nick and I, Ryan, have talked about is probably 5 or 6 needs that you could say, if you pick that guy, that position at 12, you're okay. You're not going to get killed. Ryan, who do you like the Cowboys today? And I realize this could change, any minute, but who do you think they're going to take at 12?
I would say right now it's very close between Matthew Golden and Tatora McMillan. If I had to
They're
guess.
going receiver at 1.
I think first round receiver is where they're going as of right now. Now I will say this: Tatora McMillan, I have a little bit lower on boards. I mentioned Travis is my 1, but then I have Tatora, I have Luther Burden, I have Emeka Egbuka, Matthew Golden, really tight niche for me as far as parallels. But I do think they're going to go receiver at 12 as of right now, and I would say that's Matthew Golden, even though I don't see 4.29 on tape, but I do see a player that even I liked back at Houston before all those guys transferred out, even guys like Samuel Brown out to Miami. So receiver's really the focus for me, and then you got to add a running back. You got to get an RB1 in this class, which you can be able to find. And then I think you got to add another guy in the secondary, whether that's at corner, whether even adding another piece at safety as well.
So, Ryan, hang on. Ryan, I want to make sure you get this right. You think Cowboys go wide receiver in the first round, running back, DB, 2, 3?
I would say so, yes. Yes.
Are any of those reaches?
As far as where I would take those guys?
If they're addressing, let's just say for the sake of argument, they address cornerback, which has been addressed as a need because the situation revolving surrounding Trayvon Diggs. If they draft a defensive back with their second round selection, Ryan, will that be a reach?
I'll say this: there's a certain couple of guys right in that second round bucket. I don't think Trey Amos from Ole Miss gets out of the first round as of right now. Siobhan Revel Jr. right from ECU, Darian Porter from Iowa State. Those are similar traitsy types of big corners. I really like the class in the third round, early fourth round bucket. Nick, you mentioned Quincy Riley, but also these guys they're a little bit smaller, but they have outside experience if they wanted to wait. Jacob Parrish from Kansas State, Mac McWilliams from UCF. Those types of players I think are really good football players. I'm not asking them to be top 3, 4 corners on a roster as of right now, day one, but good players that have that inside-out versatility to say, if you really don't like Siobhan Revel and the injury scares you, or Darian Porter and we really didn't see him on the field a lot because the snaps were inconsistent at Iowa State, maybe you could wait, because I know with Dallas, you got a lot of picks. You got 10 of them, but 1, 2, 3, and then everyone else is in the 5, 6, 7th round. So it makes it a little tough as far as adding capital on those day 2, early day 3 type of bucket, unless they trade up and make a play.
All right, Nick, we're going to finish this with your expertise. The Cowboys pick at 12. You gave me that pick 2 weeks ago, but things change. Who are they taking now at 12?
Yeah, I like the Golden answer because I think McMillan is going to start going before 12. I'm starting to lean that way.
He's moving
up. I
up.
think a team is going to see McMillan. I think it happens. And if that's the case, I see Matthew Golden. If he's there at 12, I think it makes a lot of sense for the Cowboys, and they swing on that.
Give me the positions that's in the second and third round. What positions are they taking?
I go corner second round, running back third, and I even give you some names. I'll give you corner Trey Amos. I think that's going to be a guy that could potentially be there at 44. I know, Ryan, you said you don't think he gets out of the first round. That wouldn't surprise me. But I know some other corners in that range that could make sense. I think Maxwell Harrison out of Kentucky, he's probably gone before then. But there could be some corners that, could pique your interest at that spot. And then in the third round, I think that third round, 76, I think that's going to be right in the sweet spot where a lot of those running backs are going to start going. You can talk about Damian Martinez out of Miami, Ollie Gordon out of Oklahoma State, Tutton that we talked about out of Virginia Tech, RJ Harvey out of UCF. I think you're going to find a starting caliber back in that run in the third round where you can see some of those guys come off the board.
Guys, that was fantastic. That was a ton of great information. I want to thank you for your time, Ryan. I know you're a busy guy, especially right now, for taking time out of your day for joining us here from the Draft Network. Nick, tremendous work as always for all of your Cowboys coverage needs. Check us out on StarTelegram.com. And for more insight on the draft, be sure to check out our good friend, Mr. Ryan Fowler. See you next time. Thanks, guys.